Hello and welcome back to the High Ground. I'm your host, Darth Choco, and I have an awesome guest. We have Kyle Katarn here today, and
Hello
we're just
there.
going to talk, hang out, talk Star Wars. How's it going, man? Where can people find you and your awesome content?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. Happy to be here. I'm Kyle Katarn. My handle is Kyle Katarn with a 1 for the L on pretty much every social media platform out there. And we're talking Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch as well. And I just like a Star Wars fan out there every day talking Star Wars, talking about the things I enjoy, getting excited about things to come, you know. I like going down memory lane. I stream a lot of old school Star Wars games as well. I'm kind of like working my way through chronologically right now. Next up's going to be KOTOR 2, and
Yeah.
actually going to be playing that for the first time. I'm pretty excited about that. Somehow that one has slipped by me for like 15 years.
Well, I'm excited. I'll have to talk to you after because I feel like some of the best Star Wars happens in that game.
I feel like
And
thematically
like
it ties right into the Acolyte, right? So it's not the perfect time to play it.
it ties right into the Acolyte when we got stuff where like yeah, I mean, I feel like the KOTOR games, both of them are actually the inspiration for the dyad that we got in the sequel trilogy. And yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff. But yeah, speaking of the Acolyte, why don't we jump into it? We just had,
Let's
as
do
that
it.
we're recording this, we had episode 3 drop last night. And how you feeling? How you feeling?
You know, I was thrown by it a little bit. I think it's fair to say. Usually, like because I'm very much a Star Wars enjoyer. I will walk out of pretty much every episode with a smile on my face because at least something in there was for me, you know. And I felt that way for this one too, but I definitely felt like uneasy. Like the way they presented
Okay.
so much stuff in the episode was very deliberately uncomfortable because they're
Yeah.
kind of casting aspersions on some very long held beliefs and ideals that we traditionally have had as Star Wars fans. And like it left me like really needing the next episode, but not so much because I'm hyped, but like I'm like, oh my God, I need the other half of this revelation now. And they're turning things the lore on its head in like a really exciting way for me. Like I love it when we get alternative interpretations of the Force, you know, comparative mythologies. I have to know everything now. You know, I need the lore deep dive. And the way they've given us like a breadcrumb of a flashback, like I need the rest of it.
I wasn't expecting the whole episode to be a flashback, and then it ends, and it wasn't short or anything like that. But when it ends, you're just like, yeah, I feel like
It's so not
the show
concluded.
has the show has mastered the anime ending. I don't know if you watch anime,
Yes,
but
no, I'm
every
I'm
episode
very familiar
ends
with the anime
the
ending.
worst possible time. Just like, damn it. Okay, no. Before this episode dropped, I kept having people pop up and say, "Just wait till episode 3. Episode 3, it's gonna like ruin everything." Now you we walked out feeling uneasy. And by the way, if you don't love something, that's cool. I have walked out of several
to
projects
be to
not
be
happy,
totally
not
clear, I'm
enjoying.
not
But
saying that I didn't like the episode. It didn't leave. There's this very familiar sense of like satisfaction that you get at the conclusion of an
yeah,
episode of any kind of Star Wars, and I didn't feel satisfied. I felt more like very intrigued, but like I felt like something was missing, and I need that missing piece. I definitely liked it though.
okay,
I had a favorable impression of the episode. I don't see. I heard
yeah,
that hype too. Like, wait for episode 3. It's going to be crazy. It's going to ruin. I don't feel like anything was ruined. If anything, I feel like they've
no,
reinforced things that have already been established in the lore, in the canon. You know, like a Vergence in the Force. This isn't even the first time we've been dealing with this. I don't know why this would suddenly be replacing or breaking anything. You know,
yeah. It's interesting. I mean, some of the comments I've been getting. I'm a massive fan of Legends. I mean, judging by your name, I would assume assume you're somewhat of a fan as well. Um,
yeah. I mean, I got the bookshelf
you know,
behind me there to back me up.
so one of the things that I heard is that, well, Darth Plagueis did this and things, and so it's kind of riding on his coattails. And then I have to say, I love that book. I love it.
Plagueis. It's a great
It's
book.
it's not canon.
It is not.
Like
It's not canon, but that doesn't mean it's not out there. You know,
it doesn't mean it's not out there, but
the way I view it is like
I can't
legends are stories told to each other in universe by canon characters. You know, whether or not the events
yeah.
of Darth Plagueis really took place, there's someone out there, some drunk Rhodian told a week way the story of that novel in universe, and like that's canon. They're tall,
I've always
tall
said
stories.
that
Maybe they're real, maybe they're not.
it's AO3. There's in-universe fan fics
Exactly.
who they're like really love the Sith, and they're like writing fanfics on the internet, and that's what legends
Cyril
are.
Karn from Andor's got some like imperial
Oh yeah,
like fan fiction. His data pad's full of it. I don't ever
if
want to
they
read
ever
it, but I
found
know
a
it's
data
there.
pad, right? Yeah, exactly.
Oh
No,
God, don't ever
so
look at that
I
man's
really
data
enjoyed
pad.
the episode, and a person that was a big surprise for me, a big standout, was Mother Anastasia,
Oh yeah,
Jodie
oh
Turner
yeah.
Smith's character. And the thing that surprised me is, right, it's this dark side coven of witches, but she was so reasonable. And while she was, kind of forcing her kids into this weird life, she was very loving and understanding of Osha's desire to do something else. They gave her a lot of shades of Shmi, and
There were
it
so
was
many parallels to
interesting.
Shmi. Yes.
It was interesting and uncomfortable at the same time, because it would be so easy to make her a villain,
Yeah.
and then the Jedi are justified in their actions, but they didn't do that, and now we have to question what happened. How do you feel?
I don't think. I think it's very interesting that you even referred to them as like a dark force, a dark side cult of witches, because I feel like this implication that they're dark is coming outwardly from the Jedi. And Mother Anastasia even said so in the episode. Some would consider our powers to be dark, but we're not out here doing dark stuff. We're just trying to survive and exist in our own little community. And it's the Jedi that's kind of placing that perspective. They're framing in that way because the Jedi believe in these binary terms of light and dark, and you can't exist in the middle, in the gray. Like, these people could be unaffiliated force users just doing their own thing, isolated in this little mountain fortress, but the Jedi can't have that. If you're not inherently light side the way the Jedi view it, you have to be dark, and you have to be controlled and regulated. And so I think they're making a very good point of, like, who's the bad guy and who gets to determine what that even means. Like,
Yeah,
the Jedi are just one religion in the galaxy. Talking about balance, talking about the light and the dark. That's like saying that, like, good and evil as implied in the Christian Bible has to apply to every person on earth. That's sort of saying my Jedi view of the light and dark has to apply to everyone in the galaxy. They're pushing that on everybody else. And I think that really came to the forefront in this episode in a way that a lot of people weren't prepared for. There's a lot of hardcore Jedi Order fans out there. They're going to have to, like, ask some pretty hard questions for themselves now.
yeah. I mean, personally, I do love the Jedi, but they're far from being without reproach.
They've done
But
some
I love that
things.
this is reframing it in a because there's kind of two ways I see these conversations happen very often in the fandom. One of them is, well, the Jedi are the actual evil ones, and you're like, no, they're not doing anything maliciously, but like there is a conversation that needs to be had of like what their role should be, what should be considered overstepping. I've a question about you, something that honestly bothered me, and I felt crazy because I felt like I was the only person. Season 7 of the Clone Wars, Ahsoka goes to arrest Maul. We know what Maul's a bad guy, right?
Right.
Was it right to send a civilian former Jedi to go overthrow their elected official from a neutral
I mean,
state with
it's got
treaties
some
preventing it?
real notes of, like, CIA interference, doesn't it? Like, it really kind of draws
It
some parallels to, like, some shady practices that have gone on. And, like, no, I don't think that it's morally well. I mean, if we're going to ask ethical questions, like, we're talking about not just a former Jedi, a former child soldier, right?
yeah.
They made her kill people before she was like 14 years old. That already is unethical, in my opinion. And now we're going in and we're trying to assassinate a leader of another planet. That's not a Republic member world either, by the way.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
it's
it's
not
all
part of the
kinds of
Republic.
it's all
In
kinds of
fact,
motifs.
has treaties saying, "Do not come in here. We are neutral. We are not part of your conflict." And they send they send an army and Ahsoka to go take him down. And we also have the end result of that is that army became a standing army and became the Empire,
Right.
and basically wiped the whole place out. And if they're not pissed at the Jedi before, they should be now. But I feel like we're like, no, but Ahsoka's cool and she looked badass, like sliding around and stuff, right? And like there's
We always
there's a
follow our
lot of
perspective character, and we're always sympathetic to them, no matter what kind of shades of gray are actually like. You're absolutely right. And if the Siege of Mandalore was told from the perspective of like a Mandalorian civilian, then yeah, the Jedi would not look like the good guys. I completely agree.
it's
We
fascinating.
let it slide because, like you said, Ahsoka looks cool. You know, we follow the rule of cool. But like, if you do stop and analyze it, like the Republic lost the plot a long time before the Clone Wars ever really ended. And like so did the Jedi Order. And that's kind of one of the things that's exciting about the Acolyte is that we get to see a Jedi Order in its actual heyday before it gets mired down in so much bureaucracy and by wartime, you know? Like these peacekeepers are converted into generals. They start training child soldiers. Like it's so far removed from the core tenets of the Jedi Order that were established so long ago. So that's something that I'm really like have really enjoying seeing so far is like the dynamic between these Jedi, the relationship between them, the fact that they have this like bit more of a spring in their step because they're not like not every single person is like a grizzled combat veteran who has seen like planets worth of death at this point. And like that's the Jedi Order
Yeah.
by the time of Order 66. They've all got that like trauma carrying it around with them with every new interaction that they come with. Like it feels much more fresh in the
Yeah.
period.
There's a short story of Barriss Offee in the Clone Wars stories of Light and Dark, and it's her after the Battle of Geonosis, and because she's a healer and she's trying to heal people, and she's talking about all of these Jedi. None of them were prepared for what happened. Most of them got wiped out in Geonosis. That was a rough time for them,
Right.
and she's seeing these scars on these people that she can't heal because they're emotional scars that they're going to carry for the rest of their lives from this battle. And this is not what any of them trained for. It's crazy, but I love that we're getting to see the cracks in the surface right now. But yeah, jumping back into the episode, we got to see what happened with the sisters. I gotta say, I liked May a lot more until she became an absolute psychopath. Well, what do you think about the girls? And
I thought, well, first of all, I thought the actresses were fantastic. They did a really good performance. Yeah, I think this episode did a lot to humanize May, but it's important to consider that we're only seeing this through Osha's eyes. Everything that happened in this episode was Osha's memory and Osha's take on it. That's why there were giant gaps in the plot too, is because she wasn't present for those developments, and she herself doesn't know what happened there. I think that we're going to retread this ground like at least two more times from May's perspective, and probably from Saul's perspective. I think would be the third one. But I think there's certain things that don't match up, and that was deliberately done that way because we're supposed to be seeing through the eyes of Osha this whole time. I thought both girls did a really, really good job. I thought the scene between Osha and Mother Anastasia, where she tells her, "I want to be a Jedi," and she like fighting against every fiber of her being, like just through sheer love for her daughter, supports her, even though that's like the absolute opposite of what she wants for her. And that single tear going down her cheek, like it was very moving, and it was just a fantastic performance. Honestly, it was probably the most well acted scene of the episode. I don't know if I would say May was being a psycho. Like I feel like I get it. You know, this planet is all she's ever known. Osha's not only her sister, she's also the only other child like friend in her life. Because like if we are to believe that these kids just like were born one day, there's no other children on this planet. Like that alone is kind of wild if you think about like the development of a child. But beyond that, like she's losing her sister. The Jedi are coming in. The Jedi are ignoring like the fact that this is not a Republic member world and like kind of throwing their weight around a little bit. Like you could see that even from Osha's perspective, like the Jedi weren't painted in this very favorable light. But I think it really did humanize May. And it's not like, oh, she's just some psycho who started a fire just cause. It's like she was, first of all, I'm not convinced that May even started the fire. I think May just burned the book because I don't get how we get from burning book to like exploding building. Shit wasn't even burning. It was exploding. We're missing something there, you know? That's step A to step C. And we haven't seen B yet.
And I'm right there with you because, Leslie Headland has already said she's a big fan of Rashomon, and I think that's exactly what we're going to be doing. I think we're going to get May's perspective of what happened, which is also going to have gaps, but it's going to make the Jedi look worse. And I feel like the final one we're going to get is the reveal of Darth Teeth and what happened behind the scenes of the whole thing. Now, I'm a big anime fan. I'm getting a lot of shades of Naruto of watching
Okay.
this, of something where it's like the Chia massacre, if you've watched it, but having ultimately like Madara being behind it all. I feel like I saw them fighting. They had bow and arrows. They had pretty primitive stuff. Yet there was all this machinery and these like all this technology around, and that is what blew up. The way that those things were framed, I feel like that is something. I think they were there doing something, and I want to find out what that is. I almost get this inkling that what they were doing was some type of experiment for the Sith, whether they knew it or not. This is just my
Mm.
wild speculation.
You're
They're doing
talking
some type
the
of experiment for
Witch's
the Sith
Coven was working
without
for the
knowing
Sith.
it. Yes.
Okay.
Whether they were aware of it or not, and that
Interesting.
what they were essentially doing was trying to create an artificial dyad, which we know is something that the Sith were trying to do.
Sure.
And once the Jedi figured out, caught on to them, I think whoever the Darksider is needed to destroy the machinery that was there. And this was a cover for all that. I also think that the witches in the coven, I mean, they didn't die from the explosion or burning. I think they were poisoned by the same poison from the tree and all that
From the
stuff.
tree,
Just the
from
way
the
they were
Bunta,
lying there.
Bunta tree.
Either they're poisoned directly from the stuff from the tree, or maybe that was burned, which became a gas and got there or something like that. But like those people didn't burn to death. You know what I mean?
No. Definitely not. You could tell immediately. If they had, if they were going to go that route, they would have done the whole Uncle Owen, Aunt Beru, like smoldering corpses. Like that's also a very traditional Star Wars move. And the fact that they decided not to do that, there's absolutely a reason why they were, their death is going to be different.
Yeah.
Mother Cora.
That was one of my complaints.
I kind of suspect her now.
Yes. I yeah, that's one of my thoughts as well.
She was really angry the whole time.
One of my complaints was like, oh, the fire didn't seem big enough. And I'm like, no, that's the story. it's not adding up because it doesn't add up.
This is also how the fire was remembered by OSHA too.
Yeah.
We're not necessarily seeing how it accurately started or how it accurately spread, and we're just seeing what OSHA saw. Like, I think one of the biggest reveals of the show is going to be how the fire actually starts. Like, I think that's one of the things we'll get in that final episode. It's kind of hilarious that we're given like an entire episode devoted to a flashback, and it's clearly not the entire flashback. Like, yeah. I think this is going to turn out to be a pretty short case in real time, and we're going to spend the majority of our season catching up to present day. Learning everything that we need to know about these girls, which is a really interesting story format. We haven't gotten a whole lot of this in Star Wars. I'm enjoying it. I like having like wild things to speculate about between episodes. Instead of just being like, oh, I wonder what Easter egg we're going to get next week. It's like we actually have to concentrate on the plot, think about the characters and their motivations, and try and figure it out. We know there's more to the story because we have not seen anything to justify Corbin drinking that poison willingly. Being that guilty and like desperate for absolution, no. Clearly they did something worse than we've seen so far.
Not only that, but I mean, he seemed to know exactly what the drink was. And so that's one of the other reasons I speculate that they were all poisoned, and who knows if it was intentional or whatnot. But yeah, there's some shady stuff going on. Okay. So, overall, how do you feel about the Acolyte? Is it the direction Star Wars needs to be going in, or is there other projects we should be focused on?
I think it is going in the right direction. I think I can say that purely from the fact that they have a writer's room on this show. The only other show that actually had a writer's room was Andor, and I think in terms of like writing and dialogue, Andor stands like at the top of the list. And the Acolyte is not far behind it, and I think that the fact that the writer's room is comprised of like a Star Wars prequels diehard, an original trilogy fan, a sequels enjoyer, like all of them together. Like I think it's very apparent when you watch the episodes because there's so much prequels energy and there's so much original trilogy flavor, and like you can see the sequels elements added into, and that's like because nowadays when you're like, I'm a Star Wars fan, people are like, what kind of Star Wars fan are you? Like there's all these different subcategories. Well, I'm a Star Wars completist. I'm someone who really is gratified by seeing things from different genres and time periods represented together on the screen. and the same production values on the same medium. It really ties the whole thing together for me. It makes it feel like it really is like a one large galaxy and not a series of insulated stories. Like whenever if you're reading a comic book and you've got like Luke on the Death Star and there's like a battle droid head in the trash can, you're like, nice. Like, it ties it together. And so for that reason, the writer's room being comprised of people of all genres, really like I feel it. I feel it in the episodes. Like you can see those little pockets, those little love letters to these different moments in the trilogy. And I like that they all can exist in one space together, Like The Mandalorian is awesome, but it's very clearly made by fans of 3 movies. We get a couple prequels, breadcrumbs in there now, but like those some original trilogy diehards right there. And it shows through in the final product and where they concentrate their Star Wars love. It's going to be things reminiscent of 4, 5, and 6. But the Acolyte kind of draws from all over the place, including the novels, including the expanded universe. Like Plagueis by James Luceno that we were just talking about, very directly referenced with the mothers and what they were talking about. So in that way, yes, I think that this is going in the right direction in that it is encompassing all of Star Wars moving forward, instead of just whatever the showrunner's favorite movie happens to be and kind of putting everything else to the wayside. Like this is the way to go forward. It makes the galaxy feel more full, more connected.
And it's been my biggest thing is we need to make sure the galaxy is broader, not just taller. I loved seeing Luke pop up at the end of season 2 of The Mandalorian, but part of me felt a twinge of disappointment because I don't want a tertiary to this story. Massively important to Star Wars.
Sure.
Not massively important to the story. I don't want them to show up at the end and solve the conflict. That feels weird to me.
Thank you for saying that because I feel the exact same way. I was so excited to see Luke Skywalker because it's Luke Skywalker. Who wouldn't be? But I did feel that same like little pang of regret that like my favorite season of Mandalorian is season 1 because it is so small in its scope and I call it street level Star Wars. We're not out here saving entire planets and blowing up Death Stars. We're dealing with the dude who lives 3 doors down in like some roadie in a cantina. Like that is equally valid. And I love those stories because there's so much world building that goes on in there. But like you said, when Luke Skywalker shows up, it's like, okay, well now we're part of something a lot bigger, but it's also something a lot more familiar. And I was having fun kind of going down these new little side alleys that we hadn't explored before. When Luke Skywalker shows up, it's kind of heralding the return of the same old in a way.
It's like going to Japan, but then going to a chain restaurant from America to eat. You know what I mean?
I'm about to be so fucking guilty of that. It's Star Wars Celebration Japan. I'm going to find myself a McDonald's. No, I won't.
I'm trying to go, but we'll see what happens. Okay. Well, how did you get into Star Wars? What's kind of your story? I know you're full time with content creation now for Star Wars stuff. You're doing some big things. So where did this come from?
Well, I mean, in terms of being a Star Wars fan, like my whole life really. When I was only 10 months old, my dad took me to a screening of Return of the Jedi, in 1989 in New Zealand. It was playing back in the theaters, and everyone in the theater hated him for it, but he brought his baby, and he did it specifically so that I could stand up and say that I saw the originals in the theaters. I made it right at the last second there. But I think I really became a Star Wars fan myself. Like the big push for me was like 1997 when the special editions of the originals got re-released on the big screen. That was like my first time seeing them on the big screen that I could remember. Being a kid, being a baby, I count it for street cred, but it's not really a memory. I don't really remember any of that. But then 2 short years later, Phantom Menace drops, and there was like no going back. Like I was fully a prequels kid, grew up during all 3 of those movies more than anything. And then I got into the books, because once 1, 2, and 3 were out, everyone kind of had the same impression. Like this was it. Like that's 6 films.
We're done forever.
Saga's done. Like the movies were cool, but it's in the past now. The story continues in novels. So I started just consuming every novel I could find. My cousin Peter came over to the house one day. I remember it. I was just hanging out and I was playing with like some of my Star Wars action figures. And he'd remembered that, so he came over and he handed me a copy of Heir to the Empire by Timothy Zahn. And he was like, the story keeps going, right? And that was like, That was my gateway drug.
So he's
and
he's like a drug dealer.
100%. He pushed
He's like-
Legends, and then I opened that book and like no going back. I was hooked. Like seriously though, it slowly started to take over, and it was like it was just before COVID that I decided to like start a YouTube channel and like talk about Star Wars and react to Star Wars, because I think it was when the Force Awakens trailer came out and everyone started reacting to that trailer. And I think that's when I first became like aware of reaction videos as a genre, as a format. And through that I found channels like Blind Wave, and I really enjoyed watching their like Star Wars conversations and stuff. And I eventually started realizing, I was like, hey, you know, this guy Eric is saying a lot of the same stuff that I say, and he seems to have a lot of similar thoughts. Like, I'm like, maybe I could do this too. You know, I've got a Star Wars helmet. I could put that behind me and have a cool bookshelf. So just as a side hobby, I started reacting to Star Wars Rebels. I think it was in season 3 at the time. Well, a few years later, COVID happens. I lose my day job. I was managing an Irish pub at the time, and then it closed down and never to reopen. But suddenly I had all this time on my hands. So I was like, put all my time and energy into YouTube. And I think it really was perfect timing, because not only did I have this time, but everyone else was out of work too. The whole world was shut down. Watch it. So like I had this captive audience that were sitting at home watching YouTube because they didn't have anything to do either. So like the numbers were really good starting out. It was really encouraging. And I've just sort of slowly, like, it's just sort of snowballed and gotten bigger and bigger. And now I'm able to do it full time, even though the world went back to work. Yeah, it's kind of crazy these days. Getting to go out and take a tour of Lucasfilm, awesome. Go to the red carpet premiere of the Acolyte. Like, got to meet Dave Filoni.
I've never been more jealous of anything in my life.
I know. I'll try not to rub it in too much. I'm jealous of myself. I'm only half believing that it was real, you know.
No, it's awesome. It's cool because, you know, I saw I've been fortunate enough through TikTok and stuff to do things or interact with most of the people that you went there with. And one of the things that I've found that's been my favorite bit is that the people in the creators in the community are some of the most awesome people around. And I haven't really found anyone to not be who they've portrayed themselves as, at least in person. And it's just been, I don't know, I've had a lot of fun just like being able to have these conversations or meet people in person. And
they're all a bunch of really authentic people. I spent the week with them, you know, everyone was kind of exactly who they represented themselves to be. And I think that's part of why this group was put together in the first place. I think that there are people out there that like kind of turn it on a little bit when the cameras are rolling. And I think audiences are smarter than that, and they can tell every time. If you're forcing enthusiasm or like feigning enthusiasm for something, like people can tell. And if they can't tell and you do it consistently, you should be out there winning Oscars, not making YouTube videos. You know what? Like that's a skill that not a lot of people possess. And so I think that because a lot of people have asked me like what advice I would give to someone trying to start out to do YouTube, especially Star Wars. And my biggest advice is just be authentic and be honest. And don't try to put on airs or like put on a persona, because A, it's exhausting, and B, people will see through it. I say exhausting because you're going to have to maintain it forever. Like you're creating a hell of a situation for yourself. Just be your own authentic self. And if people find that watchable, they'll show up. They'll watch, you know?
I genuinely feel sad for some of the creators who have lost their joy over it, but they've put so many eggs in this basket that they just have to come in every day and I don't know, cry on camera. It's like I don't know.
Yeah, it's like, it's at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, you're making your money, but these are the people that because what I try to do when I'm recording a video is I try to visualize a group of people, like a crowd of people standing right behind my webcam here, and those are the people that are going to watch this video. So I imagine that they're in the room with me and I'm addressing them directly. And when you try to visualize who those people are, you know, it can be a very interesting mental exercise, especially if you're like very familiar with your analytics and like your regions and demographics and everything like that.
No,
but YouTubers like people like you're talking about, I can only imagine what assortment of people they suddenly would find themselves surrounded by in that little room. Like, is it worth it? That's your crowd now. That's your posse, homie. Like you have to hang out with them in that little basement. I hope the clicks are worth it. The money's worth it.
I even cooled off making content for a little bit. I've been slacking over the past year, and that's why I scared myself of like, well, what if I stop enjoying this? Then what then what do I do? Am I just screwed? But like, no, I'm not gonna stop enjoying it.
No,
Or
don't do it. Just
I'm not
grind
gonna
on.
stop
I mean,
having fun with people. And my big thing is I don't want to have fans of Darth Draco or fans of. I want people who, we just did our first. We called it Dyad Con, where we had our own mini convention that wasn't actually a convention,
oh,
and we
sweet,
just had
nice.
everyone in our community come. Like we had people arrange so
Did
we
you have a
could get
pretty
hotel
good turnout?
blocks, and like I mean we had about like 50 people from like six
Nice.
different countries, and this was just our
Wow.
first one. We're gonna
You got
raise it up from there.
international attendees. That's badass, man.
We made lanyards. We gave out gifts and all this stuff. We had a whole event for watching the finale of Bad Batch, and then the Star Wars night and all this stuff,
Oh, that's
and it was
awesome.
amazing. And that's what I want. Is I don't want to have to arrange meet and greets. I want to just like have people that I can just hang out with. That's the dream. And so yeah, hopefully next time we do one, hopefully we can get you out for it.
Absolutely, man. That sounds like a lot of fun. Yeah, I recently my channel hosted our first in-person meetup last month. We did it for May 4th. The Park Forces. We went to Galaxy's Edge and then hung out on Batu and then Scum and Villainy Cantina, and we didn't have that big of a turnout, but like yeah, it was really nice to see how many people were actually willing to make the effort and come out and hang out. And like meeting these people for the first time wasn't awkward in any way like I thought it was going to be. It was just like, because I know all these guys, like we're
Yeah.
actually friends and we've been interacting for so long at this point. This really is a weird time to be alive, like so much
Right?
of our interactions are primarily online and we greet people in person for the very first time, like old friends, you know? Someone from the
Well, we're
1980s
no
observed that,
longer.
they'd be like, what is going on here? How do you know this guy?
Well, it's interesting because like I've had people say it's like a negative because we've lost that personal connection, and I suppose that's in part true. But we're also no longer locked by geography with who we
Yes.
can and can't be friends with. And so it's not I'm friends with this person because they've been my neighbor for the past 19 years and I have Stockholm syndrome, you know. Um
Yeah, no choice but to be
it's
friends.
shared. Yeah, exactly. But now it's like it's real shared and real genuine interest, and I don't know, I just think that's really
Yeah, you
interesting.
get to pick your friend group from the whole world is the pool now. When I
Yeah.
moved to America in 2000, I grew up in New Zealand. That's where I was born. And then I moved to America. I had to say goodbye to all my friends in school. Social media wasn't really a thing yet, and so I was like, okay, I guess I don't know these people anymore. Fuck, they're in another hemisphere. And then like a
Yeah.
couple years later, when MySpace came out for the first time, I remember the feeling that I got when I like went through this contact list and saw all these faces that I went to like really, really little school with, and like they'd all grown up because we were all like teenagers now, and like it was kind of emotional. I was like it was like reconnecting myself with an entire part of my life that I had left behind because we had to move across the world. And back in those days, that's just what you did. It was so hard to keep in contact. Like, what? I'm gonna have 25 pen pals? Hell no. So like,
Yeah,
social media really
I
changed the
moved up
game.
and down. I moved up and down the West Coast a lot growing up, and so I fell in a similar boat. I never had to cross time zones to talk to people I grew up with, but I definitely feel you. I I have a random question. Any chance your channel is sponsored by Keeps? Because like your beard is so perfect that like I would buy Keeps products from you.
I don't know what Keeps is. Is it a beard
Oh, okay.
trimming? Is it like a beard trimming thing?
I see a lot of like gaming channels and stuff sponsored by them. They're like help people manage like hair care and like
Oh,
if your
sure,
hair
sure. I think
starts
I've seen
falling
I think
out
I've
and
seen
stuff
ads
like
for that
that.
before. Yeah, no, I have an independent beard. It's it's unrepresented right now. Doesn't have a manager. Shout out to the Wedgwood Barbershop shop on 35th though. Ollie cuts my beard and he does a fantastic job of it. Every Monday I go in there, actually. Which I recently found out doing like a content creator finance seminar. That's tax deductible. So I'm like, I need to start saving my receipts from the barbershop because like I got to look good on camera, right? So I'm gonna
Huh.
start writing that off.
Yeah, I need to start taking this stuff seriously.
I'm
No,
dude,
that's
I'm
awesome.
on year 6 of being a YouTuber and year 4 of doing it full time, and like I'm only now taking a lot of this seriously. I don't know. That's kind of going back to what we were saying before about like how it got where it is that I never had like getting to go to Lucasfilm or meeting people. That was never a goal. It was never an objective. This has
Yeah.
always been like a personal enjoyment thing. I make reaction videos because it amuses me and because it's a way for me to connect with people that feel as deeply about Star Wars as I do. And those people aren't physically in my sphere. I can't go to the bar and see them. So because we're all worldwide now, this is how I connect with, my community. And I've chosen the Star Wars community. These are my people.
And they're the best people. I feel like honestly, Star Wars community, the good people in it are the best people of any community.
The good outweighs the bad.
that
It
very
absolutely
strongly.
outweighs the bad. The bad's just a little louder
Yeah.
sometimes. But you know what? We don't need them. We don't need to focus on them either.
Agreed. I do find myself getting mired down a bit, or have in the past, but largely, especially right now, especially with, I'm a High Republic fan, and like, man, we're eating well these days. We High Republic books are great. Temptation of the Force just dropped.
Oh,
We
can I
got
give you a little? Can I give
Jedi
you a little nugget
Survivor.
about the High Republic exclusive on your stream right here? Nobody knows this yet.
Okay, yeah.
So I got to play Star Wars Outlaws early. I was talking about that the other day as part of a press event. One of the levels has a High Republic spin on it. There's going to be some
Nice.
there's some High Republic content coming in Star Wars Outlaws. Let's put it that way.
That is super cool.
I haven't seen
Yeah,
anyone talk
I
about
would.
that on the internet yet. So
I I need to reach back out to them, because I did go out there with them at Comic-Con.
Ubisoft.
But again, I slowed down on content at that period of time. But I'm super excited for Outlaws, because I know I've been watching a lot of the footage. They sent me some of the footage as well,
Oh, cool,
and
cool.
I initially had concerns about the gunplay, because I was like, if the gunplay doesn't feel satisfying and that's like the core of the game, it's going to be a rough game,
Right.
But after watching what I've seen, and hopefully you've had good experience with it.
It's intuitive, and it took me a minute to adjust to it because it's not the style of gunplay that most of the games that I've played are. It's I could describe it's close to Red Dead Redemption style.
Okay.
It feels kind of like that, but there's a lot more assist and there's a lot more options.
Awesome.
Not quite like VATS system level options, but like it's like a step down from that, but a step up from Red Dead.
Yeah, I mean, I saw her do a high noon moment, and that that got me excited. All right, well, let's step out of as we're winding down. Let's step out of Star Wars. So beyond that, sounds like you're a gamer. You formerly managed a pub, so assume you're a drinker. What else do you enjoy?
Well, I am. I'm a big art nerd. I think that is a huge facet. It really informs who I am and the way I engage with other things. Like, I've started collecting art, especially like lately, like in my 30s. My art collection has grown like stupid huge. I've got like prints and paintings, and a lot of it is fantasy art, like book illustration art from like the 70s and 80s and 90s of like sci-fi and fantasy. Got a whole wall of maps. I've got a bunch of orcs and things like that. And I think the further I've gotten into this, it's changed the way that I approach how I view like TV. When I react to TV, for example, like I used to be focusing on the story and the writing first and foremost. And now it's like a lot more about the production design and like the props and like the costumes. And I feel like I've become more visually oriented than I used to be. It's given me a new appreciation for this stuff. But I'm a big old nerd in pretty much every way. Like I'm not huge. I won't say I'm not into anime, because I am into anime. I just have not been exposed to a lot of anime. Like the few shows that I have watched, I actually really enjoyed. But I feel like that's the big gray area for me. That's what's missing in my nerd repertoire, if you will, is anime. I need more of that under my belt. But I love Star Trek. I love Star Wars, Lord of the Rings. Those would be my top 3 probably. Sorry, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, it's a newer show. We're on episode 9. You got to hop into Kaiju number 8 with us.
Kaiju number 8. Is it?
Show's called Kaiju number 8.
Series? Is it kind of a Mambo number 5 situation?
No, it's about a guy. He's like 30. He's in his early 30s, which is unusual for anime protagonists. But
already super relatable.
Where he lives, kaijus, big monsters will just sometimes pop out. So they have a whole defense team that goes out and takes them down.
I dig it.
the leader of the defense team is this girl that he knew growing up, and that was their dream together, was to both be at the top of this defense force team. Is we're still getting that backstory, but for some reason he failed. He crashed out of it. He gave up on
Washed
that
out.
dream. He another job. Just his
He's
job
a mid
is
30s washout who
after
fights kaijus. That's so relatable to me, actually.
basically the job that he got is that after the defense force like takes down one of these big monsters, he's on the cleaning crew that has
Oh,
to come in
no.
with saws and cranes and stuff like that and move. Yeah. So, but he finally gets inspired to try one last time. And so now he's re-entered it. And as there's some other things happening, something happens where now he can kind of turn into a kaiju, but he has to hide it from
geez.
everyone else.
Oh, geez.
You got we're on episode 9.
It's called Kaiju number 8.
Just give it a shot. Yeah.
I'm putting that on my list right now.
It's my new favorite one. Me and my wife watch it every week.
I don't know if it even is it technically count as an anime. Avatar: The Last Airbender, is that an anime?
I count it.
Does that matter
personally?
Because I've heard both answers before.
People say, you know what? If it's not from Japan, it's not anime. But then those same people will watch an animated thing from Korea, and they don't know that it's not from Japan, and still call it anime. And you're like, well,
They're just like, if it's
Asian,
Western,
if it's just
not anime. That's what they're trying to say. Yeah,
and I think there's a very clear delineation between the styles between it, because you can watch something like The Boondocks, which is it's a Western show, but it's very anime in what it is.
Right.
But I don't know.
It's very clear
goes
what the
back and
influences
forth.
are.
I count it.
Because I've seen Avatar. I've seen Legend of Korra. Well, I'm on book 4 right now. I'm watching Dungeon Meshi right now. Love that show.
Okay.
Absolutely
Great
hilarious.
show.
No, it's kind of changing the way that I approach D&D now. So I'm going to try and eat all the monsters.
Awesome. Yeah, and I've recently been doing a lot more in D&D myself, and so got that going. Are you doing any big D&D plays for your stream or anything like that?
You know, I have a Star Wars Fantasy Flight, using the Fantasy Flight Games D&D module. I had a D&D campaign going on the channel. We never actually we completed the thing, but I never actually posted the final videos. They're kind of like lost episodes at this point. I still have them sitting on the hard drive, and I think I will post them. But what we're going to try and do for season 2 of this, for the next campaign, is we're going to do it live. Because season 1, we tried to film the whole thing static and then edit it all, add in sound effects, and make it kind of like an audio book. And like it sounded like a great idea at the time, and it was just an absolute mountain of work. And so we're gonna change up our approach for season 2. But gameplay wise, it was a ton of fun. I was a Gungan detective, and I had a sidekick who was a gonk droid. He wasn't just a gonk droid though; he was Beskar plated, and so in a firefight, I could use him as rolling cover and just like crouch behind him, taking shots with my Briar pistols. It's good times.
We actually played through one, and she doesn't make content anymore. I don't know if you remember Shayla Wren, who was big in the community in 2020.
Sure, yeah.
So she was a little murderous Ewok, and my friend Cal was like her sidekick, and he was an HK droid.
Oh,
and
nice.
Like our campaign, I feel bad for our DM because we went off the rails. We broke his thing. We took down the boss. Like we had Element 7, as a Jedi, and we used the Force to do a fastball special to hurl the Ewok with a spear at the bad guy. And like,
oh my god,
we just like
like some
make up our own big
tactics.
combo.
I love it. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was just it was a lot of fun. But that's awesome. Okay, well, as we finish up, is there anything else that people don't generally know about you? You want them to know, or anything big coming up for your channel that you want to plug?
That's an interesting question. I guess something that not a lot of people know about me is that I am, for much longer than I have been a YouTuber, I have been a musician, and I have been in many bands. And I sing and I play bass, and I also play piano, guitar, violin, like a bunch of stuff, but primarily singing and bass guitar. Yeah, I play drums too. I haven't concentrated on my music projects in a long time, but I'm actually getting back together with my old bandmates from many years ago, and we're trying to finish our album right now. So if and when we get that working, I'll post about it.
Definitely post about it. You're also talking about it to someone who, I mean, I've been a drummer for the past 20 years, guitar,
Oh,
bass.
nice. That's what's up.
I like to sing. I'm not good at it, but you know, I toss me in the background of some songs. And I almost feel like we need to have like a Star Wars collaboration project.
I'm so
do
down.
do something.
I have noticed through conversation that so many Star Wars content creators are musically inclined, and
Yeah.
we could definitely like put together like a gnarly jam sesh somehow through the internet. That would be awesome. Yeah, no, consider me completely in the ring for that. If we can set that up, that would be a lot of fun. Actually,
All right, let's do it.
we'll do
All
a
right.
Star
Well,
Wars.
thank
We
you
are
so
the
much.
world.
But yeah, so thank you so much for joining, and everyone else who is watching. This is the High Ground. We will talk to you next week, and may the force be with you. All right.
Cool. Yeah, that was